Welcome to Meanwhile in Turkey. Today is the 5th of February. We have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about COVID and how Turkey's dealing with it. We're going to talk about the protest at Boğaziçi University and the aftermath. We're going to talk about how our government is seeing the LGBT community. It's going to be great. Let's go. Remember last week we talked about two different worlds. One, a party happening in Uludağ, one of the great ski resorts of Turkey, and how police had busted up an internet cafe and had given fines to all the kids playing after hours. You know what happened to that hotel? Let me tell you, nothing. Remember, nothing happened. But what did happen was to the employees. You see, 11 of the employees of that hotel tested positive for COVID. And now, unfortunately, they had to shut the whole hotel down. This week, something really funny happened. Police busted a coffee house. It's one of those places where men get together and they play cards, they gamble, I'm sure they do gamble, and they kind of hang out. It's a place where, it's a men's place. Police busted it up, and this is what happened.
Gel buraya, kaçma! Kaçma! Gel buraya! Gel buraya! Hey, gel buraya. Gel buraya, kaçma. Bak öleceksin.
I mean, this guy is amazing. Did you see him run? You know how he jumped legs first? I mean, there was a belly and everything. I mean, total badass, by the way. Total badass. These kinds of arrests are starting to become more and more frequent, which is perfectly normal. You turn on the TV, you see people partying in ski resorts and things like that. And on the other hand, he doesn't get to go to a ski resort. His only joy out of his whole life is to go to the coffee house and play some card games. So of course, everything's going to start to go underground. And we're going to see more of these until they're able to open up these restrictions, which I highly doubt we'll be able to do by the summer. Boğaziçi University, our Harvard. 2 weeks ago, the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, appointed Melih Bulu as dean, or call it chancellor, of Boğaziçi University. Usually, this is not something normal. Universities are appointed. The chancellors of these universities, of all universities in Turkey, are basically appointed. Before, they used to be chosen democratically within the university, but the laws have changed and now they're being appointed. Boğaziçi started to protest. The main idea of the protest was simple. We don't want somebody who is appointed. We would like, as our chancellor or dean, somebody who is chosen democratically, which is pretty fair. Last week, a group of students were showing their art in the garden of Boğaziçi University. And in one of those art pieces was a picture of the Kaaba, but had flowers in the middle. You see, the Kaaba is the most religious place in Islam. It didn't take very long for the government to turn around and say, hey, hold on one second. This is our line and you don't cross it. And were they right? Yeah, I do believe so, they were right. However, the government went ahead and crossed another line. They suddenly turned around and said this was done by a group of LGBT students. Just like that. Social media reacted automatically, and so did all the government sycophants. LGBT did this, LGBT did that. And what happened? The protest grew even more and more and more. Everything started to climax all the way until our Minister of Interior turned around and said, there are no LGBTs in Turkey. There is no such thing like that, like them in Turkey, that it's a creation of the West. Okay. I'd like to introduce you now to Birand Ersoy.
Yüzünü göremem, sesini duyamam, bu ayrılığa boş yere ağlayamam.
I'm sorry, I meant to say Bülent Hanım. Yeah, that's right, Bülent Hanım. She gets invited to every single presidential event, by the way. So yeah, we do have LGBT. Bülent Ersoy is one of them. Twitter reacted pretty quickly, saying that these tweets were basically messages of hate. And suddenly, just like Donald Trump, the Ministry of Interior's tweets were deleted. Of course, Twitter didn't always just stop there. Who came right after? The far-right party, MHP's Devlet Bahçeli, who also tweeted that these students should be, their heads should be cut like snakes and they're terrorists, vandals, and barbarians. His tweets also got deleted for hate speech, which, yeah, that's what it is. Everything came down to this fight between LGBT, Boğaziçi University, and government appointees. And close to 160 students were arrested. The day they got arrested, suddenly the Ministry of Interior came out and said, we looked at their files, they're terrorists. They're part of the PKK, YPG, DHKPC, every single terrorist organization you can ever think of. They're there. Their idea to protest is not because of the chancellor, not because he was appointed. It's because they're there to create trouble. They're there to mix it up, to make the problem even bigger, put the people on the streets. Recep Tayyip Erdoğan turned around and said, I will not allow another Gezi. Remember Gezi? Yeah, he said, I'm not going to allow another Gezi. Police got harsher and harsher and harsher. Süleyman Soylu then went on television and turned around and said, same thing. The LGBT does not exist in Turkey. There is no LGBT. That the LGBT community affects the family values of this country. But then something interesting happened the next day. Everybody got released. Yeah. All the students that were arrested got released. Just like that. I wonder what happened. I wonder what happened that suddenly they all were released. Because if they were terrorists, they would have stayed in jail, right? If they were doing something illegal, trying to bring the government down, they would have stayed in jail, right? Well, nothing happened. They were all released. It was an exhausting week. It really was. Something interesting happened on Thursday. US President Joe Biden, announced on Thursday a presidential memorandum aimed at expanding protection of the LGBT rights worldwide and potentially through the use of financial sanctions. And guess where we're at today? We're not talking about the LGBT anymore. Coincidence? I don't think so. Absolutely not. We're not talking about Boğaziçi University anymore today. Granted, the protests will continue until the chancellor is relieved of his duty, which unfortunately he's in a bit of a predicament because he never chose to be there, and I don't think he has a choice to, quit. And I highly doubted that the president of our country, Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, will turn around and say, you know what? These students, they're right. I shouldn't be appointing people. I should give them the democratic right to choose their own chancellor. I don't think he's going to do that. Because the moment he starts doing that, then not only this university, Boğaziçi University, but every other university is going to start to do the same. We, once again, as Turks, and I'm going to tell you this story, love to dig a hole, sit in it, look up, and try to grab the person into that hole. If only with just a little bit of diplomacy, soft-handedness, we could have been able to overcome all these problems back to back, lower the tension, create dialogue. But no, we weren't able to. When the government starts to see its people as nails, it's going to start reacting like a hammer. When all you know is to be a hammer, everybody becomes nails. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Meanwhile, in Turkey, just on a small little note. The language used against the LGBT community in Turkey is appalling, ridiculous, and is unacceptable. In the 21st century, we're still talking if LGBT community exists in our country, and it's pathetic and sad. To all my brothers and sisters of the LGBT community, I am with you. I understand you, I support you, and I will do whatever I can to support you. The LGBT community not only is a fabric of the 21st century Turkey that I want to live in, it's also part of my family. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Have a great weekend.